The storm slammed into the cockpit, clawing at the fuselage as Captain Adler felt the prototype shudder, like a wounded animal. Instruments flickered, altimeter spinning out of control. He gripped the yoke, realizing he was losing both the sky and the future locked inside this bomber. Macro reports identify the aircraft as the V-7 Sonder model, a classified test platform flown only 3 times. Its 24-meter wings hit experimental turbines capable of pushing past 520 kilometers per hour, an almost unthinkable velocity for military aviation in 1938. Lightning burst across the canopy, bleaching the cabin white. Adler tasted metal, a sign of dangerous static buildup creeping toward the engines. His gloved fingers trembled on the throttle as the frame groaned. Time itself felt like the enemy pressing in on him. Technical memos from that year warned the turbines failed nearly 30% of the time in electrical storms. Engineers declared them not weather-hardened, but command dismissed the objections and demanded the test continue. Adler glanced back at the cargo hatch. 2 crate-sized devices vibrated against their straps, humming uneasily. He heard his instructor's voice. "Fear is your last instrument." The phrase anchored him as the storm tried to pull him apart. Archival analysis later identified the crates as early inertial guidance modules, prototypes that could increase bombing accuracy by over 70%. Their existence alone justified secrecy. Losing them meant altering the balance of future wars. A metallic snap tore through the cabin as the right engine sputtered. The bomber lurched left, rain hammering the canopy in violent bursts. Adler fought the roll, muscles burning, knowing one more failure could shear the wings clean off. Command logs show Adler had protested the mission from the start. His superior refused, citing a directive demanding continuous testing, regardless of meteorological disturbance. Bureaucracy had overridden aerodynamics. A warning buzzer shrieked. Through the ventilation slits, Adler saw the prototypes glow faintly. His breath caught. If the unstable modules absorbed too much electrical noise, they would burn themselves into scrap. The aircraft had become a laboratory on the edge of collapse. Records from Luftwaffe Test Unit 3 confirmed the modules required voltage stability within a 5% margin. Turbulence could push spikes 4 times higher. Engineers called it an impossible field condition. Yet command forced the mission forward. Adler radioed for early landing clearance, but the storm swallowed his voice. Static hissed violently in his headset. He slammed the console in frustration, as an old mistake, misjudging a storm front years earlier, tightened around his chest like a hand. Meteorological logs show the 1938 storm front carried gusts above 110 kilometers per hour, dropping visibility below a kilometer. For an experimental aircraft, without weather shielding, the risk of catastrophic failure rose by more than 50%. A silhouette moved behind Adler. Major Krell, guardian of the prototypes and his human antagonist, leaned in shouting accusations. He demanded Adler stay on the exact test path, waving a sealed memo like a weapon. Adler's jaw tightened as the storm screamed around them. Another violent jolt hit. The bomber pitched forward, losing almost 400 meters in seconds. Adler's stomach dropped. For a moment, he wasn't a pilot, just a passenger in a machine being torn apart. Fighting for control, he leveled the wings. The storm raged like something sentient. But deeper than the turbulence, Adler sensed a stranger pulse. Faint vibrations rising from the cargo bay, rhythmic and deliberate, as if the prototypes were waking. Unbuckling, Adler gripped the cabin rail and moved down the narrow passage. The vibration strengthened, pulsing through the floor like a mechanical heartbeat. Cold air stung his face as dread pooled in his throat. Technical records reveal the prototypes carried early gyroscopic stabilizers. Improper activation could push them into resonance, generating oscillations strong enough to destabilize an entire airframe. Their safe tolerance was less than 2 millimeters. Adler pressed his palm against a crate. It throbbed, faster than the aircraft's power supply should allow. Sweat gathered at his collar despite the freezing compartment. Something inside was spinning itself beyond control. Engineering notes from 1937 warned the stabilizers had runaway potential. Turbulence could accelerate them unpredictably. Experts urged a full grounding until fail-safes were added. Command ignored the warnings. The aircraft dropped again. Adler slammed into the bulkhead as a bolt snapped free, skittering across the metal floor. Krell barged in, barking that Adler had no authority to inspect the cargo. Orders were absolute. Survival was irrelevant. Storm transcripts show Command insisted the V-7 hold its heading for another 70 kilometers to complete the data run, disregarding charts predicting the aircraft would exceed structural limits within minutes. Adler pushed past Krell, wrestling with doubt. He remembered the crash years earlier, the one where hesitation killed his co-pilot. The memory clenched around his ribs. Doing nothing now would kill them both. Outside, the wind screamed harder. Ground reports later confirmed gusts hitting 130 kilometers per hour at their altitude. Stress simulations show the V-7's aluminum frame risked catastrophic shear if exposed to that force for more than 90 seconds. Krell lunged for the radio, determined to report Adler for insubordination. A blinding flash split the ski. Lightning slammed into the wingtip with a sound like metal tearing in half. The cabin went black. For a breathless instant, the bomber drifted blind, falling. Adler fought his way back into the cockpit, slapping dead switches. Needles spun uselessly. Darkness wrapped around him. Fear tasted metallic on his tongue. And beneath it all, the prototype's vibration deepened into a steady, unnatural hum. Analysts later concluded the lightning strike sent a surge into the stabilizers, forcing them into emergency activation. Their rotors likely exceeded 6,000 revolutions per minute, double the safe limit. At such speeds, failure wasn't possible. It was guaranteed. A warning klaxon cut through the dark. The left engine ignited, turbine shrieking like something in pain. Adler's instincts took over. He killed fuel flow, choking the flames. The fire died, leaving only the uneven creak of metal cooling in freezing air. Krell shouted that bailout was forbidden. The prototypes, he insisted, must not be lost under any circumstance. His fear wasn't for the crew, only the cargo. Adler felt anger push back against the panic. The storm wanted to kill them. Krell wanted to help it. For a heartbeat, Adler faltered. Maybe Krell was right. Maybe landing was impossible. The aircraft sagged into a spiral, nose dipping. His arms shook as he fought the roll, vision narrowing to a tunnel of lightning and spinning gauges. Then the hum changed. The vibration inside the crates wasn't chaotic anymore. It was harmonizing. The oscillations synced with the aircraft's motion, as if the prototypes had slipped into a mode no engineer had ever documented. Adler steadied the yoke, stunned as the violent shaking eased. The bomber floated, half under his control, half guided by something inside the crates. The storm still raged, yet the cabin felt momentarily weightless, suspended between collapse and rescue. Post-war studies suggest the modules may have contained primitive inertial dampening arrays. In theory, they could counter turbulence, but only within a narrow margin of error. Their drift correction range was under 1 degree, far too tiny for what Adler felt. Yet the wings responded with impossible precision. The aircraft sliced through the storm smoother than moments before. Sweat cooled on Adler's neck as he whispered a shaky prayer, unsure if he was flying the V-7 or if it was flying him. A declassified 1956 report later revealed a twist. Sketches of an autonomous flight module buried deep in Reich archives. The schematics were incomplete, but their feedback loops mirrored the oscillations detected in the V-7's final transmission. Krell stumbled into the cockpit, face drained of color. He accused Adler of triggering unauthorized systems, shouting about court-martial and treason. Adler ignored him. The artificial horizon had stabilized by nearly 30%, without engine thrust. Luftwaffe logs show the V-7 had achieved partial stabilization only once before, during a fully controlled test that lasted 32 seconds before rotor meltdown. Yet now, 2 minutes and counting, it defied every recorded limit. Clouds thinned ahead. For a moment, Adler glimpsed the world below. Forests, cliffs, blurred by rain. Relief washed through him, fragile but real. Then the hum shifted lower, slower, as if the prototype sensed the storm easing and began to power down. Analysts later theorized the modules lacked proper cool-down protocols. Without a controlled deceleration, rotor bearings could seize under thermal stress. Temperatures inside the crates may have soared past 160 degrees Celsius. A grinding shriek tore through the fuselage. Adler smelled burning metal. The synchronized stabilization died instantly. The bomber rolled hard right, losing altitude fast. Krell screamed orders no one could possibly obey. Adler fought the spiral with fading strength. Senior command transcripts captured the final signal, a burst of static followed by a half-second harmonic tone. Some researchers believe the frequency matched the prototype's core gyroscopes, an encoded heartbeat of machines dying midair. Adler's vision blurred as the aircraft plunged. The yoke felt disconnected, dead in his hands. The storm swallowed the V-7 again, lightning tearing across the canopy in frantic flashes. The bomber was becoming weightless, like it was slipping out of the sky. Civilians on the ground later reported hearing an engine howl vanish abruptly over the mountains. No wreckage was ever recovered. Search teams combed over 600 square kilometers. Detection rates dropped to 0. It was as if the aircraft had been erased. Official inquiries blamed meteorological extremity. Unofficial ones continued for decades. The prototype's design lineage resurfaced quietly in early inertial systems of the 1950s. Their principles lived on, even if the V-7 did not. Today, museums display fragments of similar guidance modules, while universities analyze the surviving sketches. Researchers replay the V-7's final tone again and again, tracing its harmonic rise, listening for meaning in the noise. And when they hear that rising hum, the same sound Adler first felt inside the storm, they recognize what it echoes now. Not failure, not loss, but the unanswered question of where the bomber truly went. If this hidden chapter of aviation shifted your perspective, tell me where you're watching from.